So much for joining us here on this wonderful Monday afternoon. We're live here on WISL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. And we're back streaming online as well, so hopefully the audio issue is all worked out. We're talking about Biden's moves on the war on drugs today, not today, last week, and whether or not they're actually making a difference. Again, I first heard this and I was excited. I was like, great, yeah, cool. He's finally doing something on this. That's awesome news. But I look at the timing. Oh, it's October, huh? Wonder why he chose October to do this. They're probably looking at the polls. They're saying we need a winning issue, and we need a way to, we need a way to get voters excited about the Democratic Party, which in spite of inflation, bad policy, taking away our rights, all that stuff, like we can get people excited about this issue, and here's the reason to show up to the polls. Um, you know, it does feel a bit cynical to me, and including you got Vice President Harris, who is responsible for locking up a lot of folks. Like when she was the Attorney General of California, 1,974 people were admitted to state prisons for marijuana or hash possession, just possession charges while she was Attorney General of California. So she's responsible for her and or her teams sending nearly 2,000 people to jail for this thing. Again, this isn't going to be fixed by what President Biden is doing. This has to be fixed at the California level. So uh, I guess the governor could do more about that if he hasn't already. But there's so many of these cases where that has to be fixed. I'm glad politicians are coming around when there's good public pressure on some of these issues where it ends up on the side of liberty. That's great. Just wish there was a little bit more kind of atonement from some of those folks, and they everyone isn't just who is in favor of this move isn't like, yeah, cool, Kamala's our gal. No, that she yeah, no, she did some bad stuff and hurt a lot of people for, again, just possessing marijuana, which is, again, separate from any of the other issues related to the black market. So again, to that end, a lot of work to do on state level, a lot of work to do on like the kind of prosecutorial level as well, and a lot of work to do on the federal level. And there are things that we could do if Joe Biden really wanted to like make a difference here. He could come out in favor of a version of the bill that I talked about. Again, a simplified, like, just, we're going to leave marijuana regulation to the states. It's no longer a Schedule One drug. We're going to make it, Schedule Five is like kind of lowest level. That's like cough medicine level, or maybe somewhere in between the two. Okay, it can be a little bit higher. Fine, like, let's compromise. Let's do something good, but keep it simple, right? It doesn't need to be a thousands page monstrosity. And when I talked about that bill a while back, there's all these, like, equity provisions too, to make sure that, like, the victims of the war on drugs are compensated. And part of me thinks, like, all right, again, who pays for this, right? It's people like me who are not really in favor ever of that being illegal in my adult lifetime. A lot of stuff has happened well before I was born on this issue, but I'm going to be paying for that. Meanwhile, people like Chuck Schumer and Vice President Harris and Joe Biden, who are directly responsible for the misery that they're only taking teeny tiny baby steps to address, aren't going to have to pay anything about that. Like, just absolutely nothing. Other and face no political consequences for being just demonstrably on the wrong side of this stuff. And that was been a lot of my criticism of a lot of Democrats who have been around for a while. I said that, about Congressman Morelli too when I was running against him. I said that about was it Chuck Schumer. I said that about the Governor Cuomo, again, who eventually kind of came around on this issue. Great. I get mixed feelings when, hey, yeah, you did the right thing after hurting a lot of people. Cool. I'm glad you're doing the right thing now, but, like, we need to make it right, and we need to go a lot further on this. And again, I know some folks who are thinking, like, "God, I don't know if I want it to be illegal though. I want it to be legal. I don't know if that it makes sense for marijuana to be something that people can just buy. Isn't that akin to kind of an endorsement of this thing?" And that's the argument I've heard from some folks who are on the other side of this issue. And then to those folks who are listening, I would say, well, no, the government does allows a lot of things that aren't illegal. They just might not be smart, right? There's a lot of you can in some cases it's not illegal to lie to someone. It's not illegal to be a jerk to someone. It's not illegal to do any number of things as long as you're not hurting someone or taking their stuff, and it shouldn't be. That's not a moral endorsement of those activities. Not every single thing, every single morality does not need to be regulated by the state. Some of it just needs to have you know kind of social and personal consequences, and that's the same thing I feel about on marijuana or alcohol, right? Like you can consume alcohol safely, responsibly. You can do so recklessly at a one-time issue. If you're driving drunk, you can do so recklessly if you are over consuming on a daily basis. But there are other folks who can enjoy a nice craft beer, and there's a lot of industry built around that. There's a bunch of cool stuff happening, in my city, in my neighborhood around alcohol consumption, and that's great. And most people are going to consume responsibly. That's fine. Marijuana's the same way. There are folks who just they use it recreationally. There's some folks who can use it medicinally too. And then I'm like, alcohol does have some medicinal uses for some folks, but it can be habit forming. It can be something that folks can grow dependent on. You can use it and end up driving irresponsibly with it, just like you can with alcohol. There are risks to this, but again, it's just a matter of what those trade-offs are, right? Like, is it worth enforcing this prohibition because some people, a minority of people, might abuse it? No, I don't. It's too expensive. It ends up hurting other people. It ends up destroying lives in different ways. It's a trade-off. That trade-off for crushing liberty is not worth it. It's just not. And and I can make the argument about other drugs too. Again, some of the drugs that are far more serious in terms of physical and mental consequences for you, but it might still not be worth it for the government to have a blanket prohibition that sends people to jail for prohibition. It's That's not always the best way. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times, like involuntary throwing someone in a cage isn't the best way to help them out. If it means they're losing their jobs, damaging their families, and being left with the record that's going to follow them the rest of their life. No, that's not a good way to handle some of those problems. You're going to end up making someone's life worse because of that. And again, to that end, when we end up marking people like this in the war on drugs, it causes other problems. I did a show about the crime recently, right? And if you end up doing something dumb as a teenager, like possessing an illegal drug, and that record ends up following you for a long time, you feel like you have diminished job prospects. You're now desperate. You're not able to find the opportunities you feel that you deserve because of this record. Then, yeah, that's going to lead you to more dangerous and more reckless activities sometimes. It's like, well, I got to get some money, and there's no job prospects for me. I'm already branded a criminal anyway. Why not go further? And a lot of folks who end up falling into that mindset. Again, but listen to some of Larry Sharp shows about this, about finding ways for people to be able to successfully exit that. And again, that's tough to deal with, but that is one aspect that we could easily and clearly make people's lives better, to focus on helping folks who have legitimate drug problems and not destroying the lives of someone who is doing something reckless but probably shouldn't have their life ruined over it, right? That's to use the government to do the least amount of harm possible, and ideally, reduce the both the violence that government commits against its own people and reduce the cost of that as well. Because again, a lot of the infrastructure around the war on drugs is costly. It's costly in terms of actual dollars. It's costly in terms of our liberty too. There's so much that's come out of the war on drugs that ends up infiltrating other aspects of life, the surveillance, the militarization of police, the I know again I had said the surveillance part of it, but like the cell phone monitoring, the video monitoring, the keystroke, all that stuff. A lot of it came out of the war on drugs. It's technology developed specifically to attack that, and again we have negative consequences from it too. It's like when did gun crime shoot up the fastest in this country? There's two moments. It was the prohibition of alcohol, and it was the onset of the biggest phase of the war on drugs during the Nixon administration. It made crime go up a lot. If we want to reduce crime, uh, this is actually weirdly a good way to do it. Is to end the war on drugs. It sounds counterintuitive, but eliminating the black market and the profits that come from it is a good way to reduce violence. So we have these opportunities available for us now. There's the political will to do it. It's just, will Democrats, find the gumption to do it? Will Republicans apply the consistent principles and liberty to do it? Will we have consistent constitutionalism or continued statism, regulation, uh, and expensive prohibition in terms of lives and money over this issue? I don't know. And again, so we're going to talk about to wrap up this show. We're going to talk about other solutions. I just throwing this out there as the ending the war on drugs. Y'all know where I'm going to go with this. I'm libertarian. That's part of what I do. But also for the folks who are like, well, maybe this is Biden's next step in ending mass incarceration. Well, not really. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that when we come back, and whether or not this actually does anything towards mass incarceration. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, though. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. Sort of. It's pre-mix feed. So, hi, I think Shelly is the only one listening. Well, yeah, no, 100%, Shelly. We'll have outrageously high licensing for distribution if we don't demand otherwise. Yeah, it's gonna be part of it. It's what Chuck Schumer bill will do, unfortunately. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thank you so much for joining us here on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. In live here until 2 p.m. And got a comment on YouTube from Shelley who says, we will have outrageously high licensing for distribution if we don't demand otherwise. Yeah, no, 100%. That's the bill that we're going to end up getting with a lot of folks, right? It's going to be a problem in New York State. It is a problem in California. Less of a problem in Colorado, but still definitely a thing. And if the feds end up regulating and having their own licenses and approval processes in place, yeah, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be incredibly difficult for average people to be able to start a small business in this area, even if you're able to, take care of sourcing and wholesale and all that stuff, all the complicated stuff related to getting a business and being able to get the supplies you need to be able to sell product. It's still going to be tough. And then the licensing process will make it tougher. And unfortunately, it'll be, folks are either politically connected or well off, or have the money to be able to research the compliance to do it. It's a difficult thing. It's all the same thing actually. After Prohibition, there was the reason why you didn't have any craft breweries is because it was too tough for most people to get involved because of federal regulations and distribution laws. And one of the three good things that Jimmy Carter did was deregulate the alcohol industry, really push for that, and that made it possible for craft breweries to emerge. It's just they started moving towards self distribution, started moving towards like making it easier for small businesses to get their licenses, and making it easier to get permission to start brewing. Yeah, like that was part of it, and opening up home brewing and stuff too. It wasn't that long ago that like the reason again why we have so many craft distributors nowadays is that there had to be a move that took decades after alcohol being legalized again to finally make it easy for small businesses to emerge and not just have like a handful of extremely large players and who were happy to rest on their laurels with I wasn't there, but what he would describe to me as a subpar product. I'm sure some of it was fine, but a lot of folks they like that there's so many new options around it, and we're going to see the same thing happen with marijuana too. To that end, I know some of the folks who are like in favor of this move, including libertarians, like, hey, cool, we're going to end mass incarceration now. Mass incarceration is caused by the war on drugs, and for those of you who aren't aware, like, the United States incarcerates more people per capita than most other countries, like just a lot of other countries. It's alarming. Like the type of folks who are beating us are not the ones that we want to be up on a list with, right? Just authoritarian, nasty regimes, right? The United States, because of policies pushed by Joe Biden and executed by folks like Kamala Harris, sends a lot of folks to jail, right? And what's the talking point? One that I have repeated before too. Well, the way to stop this is to end the war on drugs, which is still sort of true, just in a roundabout way. But the way to have fewer people locked up is to no longer send people to jail for just possessing marijuana. But the thing is, it's not that many people. It's a lot. It's still too many. Even a few 1,000 folks impacted by this list in California, under Kamala Harris's Attorney General reign there, almost 2,000 people were in jail for this. But a lot of folks are in jail for other reasons. And I mentioned this about the whether or not someone's pleading down to simple possession in the federal cases or at the state level if it's just possession cases. It's not always just that. It's carrying an illegal firearm. It's trafficking. It's intent to distribute, that type of stuff, right? It's other crimes associated with this, and a lot of the folks who are in jail for violent crimes. Like that's what it is. So we decided as a country to get tough on crime in the 90s, especially. In kind of bipartisan consensus on this sort of thing, and Joe Biden was one of the most vocal advocates of this. And a lot of the folks who in other countries, like if you assault someone, you hit someone, if you even murder someone, it is a much shorter sentence in many other places than it is here. So it depends on the country, but in some places, if you murder someone, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be in prison for life. You might be in prison for 5-10 years. Right? It's just different. So in the United States, we lock people up longer. Now there's an argument that goes, well, doing so, keeping people who are actually committing violent crimes off the street longer ends up creating safer communities. And the argument goes that doing so is part of what caused the high crime of late 80s, early 90s to drop so much over the last 30 years. It's doing that exact thing. It's locking violent individuals up longer. We did that. That's what it is. But the consequences of that is we have this very expensive system with some folks who are in jail perhaps far longer than what makes sense from a rehabilitation and even a safety perspective. And by that, I mean, there's some folks who should and ought to be in jail for committing a violent crime. It's just a matter of what is the purpose of jail? Is jail to get justice? Is it to punish someone who has now been robbed of the life of a family member? Is that what jail does? Is you took away someone's life, so we're going to effectively take away your life, put you in a cage for the rest of your life, and that's your penance for committing this awful act? Or is jail to separate someone just long enough so that the violent tendencies and the circumstances that cause them to act in such a way are now no longer a factor in how that person's going to act after getting out of jail? And part of me tends to lean towards that latter interpretation of how we ought to treat our incarceration system. And the problem is just knowing what that point is. Because unfortunately, there are still some folks who may serve many years in jail and come out and then again commit a violent crime. It can and does happen. So I don't have the answer on that. But for the folks who are like, yes, finally, Joe Biden's doing this and he's going to end the war on drugs and end mass incarceration. No, he's doing none of that. He is taking a good step, something that isn't nothing, but it's mostly virtue signaling before a midterm election, and that's a bummer to me because there's so much good that could happen here. There's so much more that he could do to change the lives of folks impacted by the war on drugs, to undo the negative effects that he himself caused, that his vice president caused. And they're not doing it. They're just doing just enough to do something that polls well enough to maybe get him a few more votes. Not him exactly, but Democrats. Democrats who are going to say they support this. Because unfortunately, that's how our politics goes. So when the president does, people vote on how they, in midterm elections, based on how they feel about the president. Yeah, it shouldn't do that, but a lot of people do that. And yeah, that's what we're seeing here. So does it fix these massive issues? No. Is it a good step? Sort of. We should go farther because realistically, the time right before an election is the best time to try to get politicians to do what you want. Because after the election, it doesn't matter. You've already given them what you wanted, right? Or what they wanted, right? They got their votes. They get to stay in power. They're comfortable till whenever the next election comes, right? So you really got to turn the heat up again. But I don't know that that's going to happen. I think people are kind of too locked in, and this is going to be just good enough for what he wants to do. It's just the fellow Democrats in congressional elections, maybe just a little bit, tiny bit. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to make the difference, and I don't know that it's as good as he could do. And so usually I'm not this cynical about it. I was excited, and I just wish it could have been more. But there's a lot of good stuff to do in this area, and there's still a lot of opportunity to reduce not just the misery of folks who are in prison, but to reduce violent crime and to make a safer, healthier society by making reforms in this way. Talk about the black market thing. How do we get folks to just be entrepreneurs instead of thugs who are fighting over someone taking their stuff and they have no way to turn to police to get recourse? Yeah, stand to works. And violence gets people out of jail, gets people back productive in society again. All right. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. I will be back on Wednesday. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, folks. Yep. Bye.